Alright guys, so I'm going to try to show you the noise that the car makes. So the noise happens at about 35-40 miles per hour, so I'm going to get up to that speed. And it seems to only happen when we're in drive. So if I switch it over to third or I switch it over to second, it doesn't make the noise. So let's try to get it to make the noise. So we're in drive, so let's get up to 40. It's probably going to take a minute. It doesn't do it all the time. So, I'm going to show you, once I switch it to third, it's not going to make the noise. I'm going to switch it back. It's going to take a minute to start again. And then, hold on. So this noise, it doesn't happen when you're on the highway and everything. It only happens when you're going, like I said, 35 or 40 miles an hour. So that's what I'm trying to do. This road, the speed limit's about 40, so at least I can drive at 40 miles an hour without people screaming at me. Just trying to get it to make the noise again. So yeah, this is a 2010 Rav4. I'm going to switch it over again. It doesn't make the noise. I switch it back. And another thing is too, as soon as I take my foot off the gas, the noise will stop. So I'm going to try to show you that too. Coming up to a red light, so I'm going to turn around. Okay, foot off the gas, stops. So I'm going to turn around. Got fingerprints all over my glasses. Drive. Let's try to get it to make the noise again. So when I first got the car, the noise wasn't that bad. And what I thought it was the plastic undercarriage panel. When it caught the wind a certain way, I thought it fluttered, which that's what it kind of sounded like. But just recently, the other day, it got worse. So we buttoned up the undercarriage panel so it doesn't move, and it still makes the noise. So now we know that's not it. So, plus, like I said, when it's in third, or when you take your foot off the gas, it doesn't do it. It stops. So, alright guys, so the first thing we checked on the car was the drive shaft bearing. This bearing is located towards the front of the car, underneath kind of where your center console would be, and it's located on, hence the name drive shaft. So when this goes bad, sometimes, actually when it goes bad, it makes like a knocking, like vibrating kind of sound. That's how I can describe it. And that could cause somewhat of the noise that we were hearing. So that was the first thing we checked. So once we checked that, it was quickly ruled out because it was beautiful. We pulled it down and we spun it a bunch of times. It was beautiful. There was no rough spots or anything. It was just completely fine. So that wasn't it. So then we checked the U-joints on the drive shaft. Now, the rear U-joint had a little bit of a problem. It was rough when moving it around. So what we did to fix that was we packed the joint with paper towels, and then we soaked that in oil, just so the oil wouldn't like run off the U-joint automatically, and let that sit for a few hours, and then put it back on the car. Now this did help, but it didn't solve like the shuddering problem. That still happened, but the car, it did sound a lot better. So that was probably part of the problem, but it wasn't the main problem. But that's good. At least now in my mind, I know that I need to replace that U-joint. So the next thing I checked was the front driver's side wheel bearing. Now, when I was trying to get to the wheel bearing, I may or may not have accidentally broken the sensor where that's located. So that needs to be replaced now, which is fine. I mean, whatever. But that leads me into the point of we got to go to the boneyard to look for the sensor. Now, we didn't end up finding the sensor, so I ended up just having to order it. But that does lead us into some nice boneyard footage. Now back to that bearing. That bearing was fine, so that wasn't the problem. So we put the tire back on and went on searching. So next we took the car for another drive. Now when we did this, all of a sudden we started to hear kind of a grinding noise coming from the left rear tire. So we knew something was going on there. So we brought the car back and we took off that tire. Now what we found is, for some reason, my pads weren't wearing evenly. So the pad that was in front was fine, but the one in the back was wearing down to metal. Luckily, we caught it in time, so it didn't cause any damage to the rotor. But what we did was, we took one of the pads from my mom's car, which is the same car, and we put that in, because that pad still had a lot of meat left on it. And in, I don't know, like 3-4 weeks, we're going to put new brakes in. So it really wasn't worth putting one set of new brake pads in to be doing them all in a few weeks. So that's what we did there. So after that was fixed, I took it for another drive. And this is when I noticed that the noise only happens at 35 to 40 miles per hour, as you heard in my driving segment. And the noise also only happens when it's in drive, or fourth gear. So when I drive the car in third, because you can switch manually in my car, there's no problem. Obviously, you can't drive in third up over like 50, 55 miles per hour, but no noise, no noise whatsoever. And once I hit 55 and I kick it into fourth, there's also no noise. So that's how I figured out that the noise only happens at about 35 to 40 when you're in drive. So after taking the car around a few times and counting and keeping track of when the gears actually switched, I was able to figure out that it goes into third about 38 miles per hour, and then it tries to switch into fourth at 40, which is way too soon for the car to be switching gears. So that's when I realized that it's trying to change gears way too early. It's way too early. And then the car's just struggling to try to get into fourth. So that's where the noise comes from. So that's when I went to the computer and I looked up shuddering noise or vibrating noise at about 35 to 40 miles per hour. And that's when I got something called the torque converter shudder. Apparently this is a very common problem, apparently. And just the symptoms that I found just sounded exactly like what I found. So that being said, that made me realize that it's either the tranny fluid, the torque converter, which is attached to the tranny, or all three. So now it's time to plan where we go from there.